Welcome to Communicate Like This on Listenable. I'm Dan Perky. This is Lesson 1, what you'll learn and how you'll benefit. This course is dedicated to teaching people communication tools to drive out miscommunication, misunderstandings, preventable arguments, and stress from people's lives, among a much longer list of bad consequences related to ineffective communication. Communicate like this, and everything will work better for everyone. You know what drives me crazy? Arguments. Particularly arguments that could have been avoided if the people involved were just aware of and used some basic communication prophylactics. My goal in these podcasts is to arm you with tools you can use to eliminate all arguments from your life. A lofty goal for sure, and maybe that's too high of a mark to achieve. We're all humans after all, and perfection is extremely rare. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for perfection and improve our lives along the way to the greatest degree possible. Besides, imagine what your life would be like without any arguments. Peace, serenity, harmony, freed up time to spend on things more fulfilling to your being. Those are all great things to have. Arguments don't make any sense to me most of the time. I mean, someone makes a statement or takes an action that basically makes the other person feel less than or demeaned in some way. Or maybe the actions are the opposite of what the other person expected or wanted. Most all arguments fall into these two categories. One person, and then eventually the other person, feels wronged somehow. The other person didn't live up to the expectations of the aggrieved person. And so the aggrieved person now has the right to scream and yell and call the other person names and make over-the-top exaggerated claims. Now has the right to physically assault the other person? To what end? To make themselves feel superior? To put down the other person? To be quote unquote right? Are arguments a zero-sum game where in order for one person to win, the other person has to lose, and you'll both fight to the death to ensure that's the case? Come on. There's a better way, a more logical way, a more respectful way to deal with disagreements that won't have your blood pressure spiking and your face turning red to the point you need to call 911. I don't get how some people claim to actually like arguments. There's the old stereotype justification that the makeup sex is great. But really? Do I want to go to bed with someone who has just pissed me off to the limits? Someone who maybe just a few minutes ago had my blood pressure spiking off the charts and was literally screaming at me? Someone who called me an idiot or insane or stupid or insensitive or unloving or ugly or 100 other demeaning and insulting names? Now you want to have sex? Really? But let's take the sex thing off the table. I use that only to make a point that arguing generally doesn't make people fall in love or even make people like one another. Mostly, arguments just drive a wedge between people. Sure, you can have disagreements, different points of view, but real, live, actual arguing? Leave me out. I don't like it, and I don't want to do it. Now, I have argued before. I have gotten pissed at people, but it's really not very often. And one of the big reasons is that I have a toolbox full of communication tools that I employ to reach a mutual understanding instead of simply arguing. I want to share those with you in these podcasts. So, if you like to argue and like extra stress in your life and don't want to find a way out of it, then this podcast isn't for you. However, if you don't like to argue and want to learn some constructive ways to not only solve arguments, but prevent them in the first place, you're tuned to the right channel. Ever wonder how you find yourself in conversations that end in arguments and wonder, how did we get here in the first place? Even deeper, ever wonder how you could have avoided the situation to begin with? Ever wonder how someone got your instructions so totally wrong? Or how you got someone else's instructions so totally wrong? You know, the old, I said X, but you did Y scenario. Ever wonder how what you said got so totally misconstrued by the other person? Or how you so totally misconstrued what the other person intended? You've reached the right podcast to not only wonder no more, but to be able to take proactive steps to prevent any more wondering. So, in summary, here's what you're going to learn in this series of courses. Simple, practical communication tools that will help you avoid arguments, misunderstandings, miscommunication, and additional stress in your life. Life already is too complicated and stressful as a general rule for most people. Why not take some easy steps that can actually improve your situation? Keep listening to this series of courses and episodes under the title of Communicate Like This, and you will find yourself heading towards a life with less stress.